So next I am going to discuss the term impulse. Of course, before I discuss the term impulse, I would like to give you the answers for the question in connecting bodies which I have shown you on the screen in the previous class. So for the question I have shown you on the screen in the previous class, if you simplify, I told you to do the simplification part yourself. If you simplify, you get the magnitude of the acceleration of the blocks as 5g/11. I'm just writing the answers so that you can check up your calculation. Magnitude of the tension in the first string. The magnitude of the tension in the first string connecting the blocks A and B will be 5 mg/11. So magnitude of tension in the first string connecting the two blocks is 5 mg/11. And magnitude of the tension in the other string between the blocks B and C will be 2 mg/11. So the magnitude of the tension in the other string connecting the blocks B and C will get 2 mg/11. You just check up your answers. If you want, you can copy the answers. In case you already got the answers, it's okay. In case you have got different answers, you check up your calculation again. Of course, now I'm just before I discuss the term impulse, I would like to discuss one more case in connecting bodies. Then I will be discussing in the term impulse. After discussing the term impulse, I will be showing you the assignment in Newton's laws of motion. That means questions in Newton's laws of motion for your practice. Starting with the simpler questions, and some of the questions were given in the previous entrance exam papers. And so that you can first try those questions yourself. I will be showing the questions one after another in the same way as I have shown some questions in the kinematics. So in the assignment in Newton's laws, I will be showing questions on Newton's laws of motion and also some problems, including some problems in connecting bodies. And in the last, I will be, after showing all the questions, I will be giving you the answers so that you can check up your calculation part. After showing you the answers in my later class, I will be doing the discussion of those questions. So those students who need explanation or solutions for the questions, they can go to the class for solutions. Okay, I think you have copied the answers. So I would like to just show you one case in the Newton's laws of motion. Suppose if you consider a uniform rope, let us consider a uniform rope resting on a smooth horizontal floor. Let us suppose the rope is pulled by two collinear forces of magnitudes F1 and F2 applied in opposite directions. Let us suppose, let us consider uniform rope. Uniform rope resting on a smooth horizontal floor. I have not shown the floor on the diagram. We assume that it is resting on a smooth horizontal floor. Let us suppose the rope is pulled with forces of magnitudes F1 and F2 in opposite directions as shown in the figure. So I would like to discuss the calculation of magnitude of tension acting at any cross section of the rope in terms of F1 and F2. Thereby, after that, we are going to also arrive at one conclusion which will be useful for some questions at later stages. Let us consider the cross section of the rope. At a distance L1 from the first end where the first force is applied, and at a distance L2 from the other end where the force is applied. Of course, length of the rope is L1 plus L2, which you can denote it by L. The rope is uniform, means the rope has same area of cross section and same density at all parts. The cross area and density are uniform, same throughout the length of the rope. So I would like to calculate the magnitude of the tension acting normal to the area of cross section at a distance L1 from the first end and at distance L2 from second end. So let us assume one of the forces to be larger than the other force. I mean magnitude of one of the forces to be greater than magnitude of other force. Of course, the conclusion which we are going to arrive will be the same irrespective of whether F1 is larger or F2 is larger in magnitude. But to start the calculation, we assume that, let us suppose F1 is greater than F2. So that the rope moves towards right with some constant acceleration. If the forces are constant, then the force acceleration is also constant. Then I consider the rope as two objects placed in contact, similar two objects in contact. The part of the rope with length L1, I consider one object of mass M1. The second part of the rope with length L2, I consider another object of mass M2. And we are going to apply Newton's second law for each part of the rope separately. Let us suppose F1 is greater than F2 and the rope is moving towards right with some acceleration. A towards right. So during this motion towards right, the first part of the rope pulls the second part towards right. So the first part of the rope exerts the force on second part towards right. The first part of the rope pulls the second part towards right with certain force. So here F bar subscript 1, 2 represents the force on second part. Again here listen, I draw it more clearly on the right side and below. The first part of the rope pulls the second part towards right. So I draw the action-reaction pair separate figure for more clarity. The first part of the rope pulls the second part of the rope towards right. So the first part of the rope exerts a force on second part towards right, which we denote by F bar subscript 1. F bar subscript 1 is the force on second part of the first part, which acts towards right. According to Newton's third law, to every action there is always equal and opposite reaction. Here actually the force exerted on the second part of the rope by the first part of the rope. So direction of the reaction will be opposite to action. If action is towards right, reaction will be towards left. If actually the force on M2 by M1, reaction will be the force on M1 by M2. So denote by F bar subscript 1. But action and reaction forces will have same magnitude. So in vector form, we write F bar 1 2 is negative of F bar 2 1. But when we consider the magnitudes, you can say mod of F bar 1 2 same as mod of F bar 2 1. And denote by T. Let T denote the magnitude of the tensile force acting normal to the area of cross section at this particular, at distance L1 from first end and distance L2 from second end. So I draw a separate free-body diagram for mass M1 and separate free-body diagram for mass M2 showing the forces in the horizontal direction. The force on M1 by M2 must be indicated in the free-body diagram for M1. The force on M2 should be indicated in the free-body diagram for M2. Magnitude of each force is same, T. So actually the force on M2 by M1, it should be indicated free-body diagram for M2. So if you draw a separate free-body diagram for each body, of course showing only the forces in the horizontal direction. I don't mean there are no forces in the vertical direction. Of course, in the vertical direction, weight of each part of the rope will be balanced by normal reaction force by the smooth floor. So here action is the force on M2 by M1, which has magnitude T. It should be indicated free-body diagram for M2. Reaction is the force on M1. So it should be indicated free-body diagram for M1. The magnitude of this reaction force is also equal to T, which acts toward the left side. Now the force F1 which acts on M1 should be indicated free-body diagram for M1. The force F2 applied at the second end of the rope should be indicated free-body diagram for M2. Here both are moving with same acceleration A towards right. So if we apply Newton's second law by considering the forces in the horizontal direction, resultant force on M1 you can write F1 minus T. I mean magnitude or modulus of the resultant force on M1 equal F1 minus T. According to Newton's second law, that is the product of mass M and magnitude of its acceleration. Magnitude of the resultant force on M2 towards right. You can write for M2 tensional force act towards right, F2 acts towards left side. So that will be T minus F2. That is equal to M2 into A. A is the magnitude of acceleration of the rope, which is same for both the parts of the rope. If you divide one equation by the other, because to find the magnitude of tension, you should eliminate the acceleration A, for which I divide one equation. Both the parts of the rope have same area of cross section and same density. So ratio of the mass of the two parts of the rope can be taken as equal to ratio of the length. As you must be knowing, mass is equal to volume into density. V is the volume, D is the density. Volume can be the area of cross section to length. So mass m1 of the first part of the rope, can write AL1D. Mass m2 of second part of the rope, L2D. Both the parts of the rope have same area of cross and same density. Here small d the density of the material of the rope. So F1 minus T divided by T minus F2. You get L1 by L2. You can simplify it yourself. So if you are interested to copy the working part, you can copy this working part. You can copy down the calculation if you are interested to copy the solution. Then if you cross multiply and solve for T, you can cross multiply and solve for T. So magnitude of the tensional force acting normal to the cross section of the rope, distance L1 from first end where force F1 is applied, and the distance L2 from the other end where force F2 is applied, F1 L2 plus F2 L1 . So I again rewrite the last equation which I was writing. So magnitude of the tension in the rope at the cross section is given by F1 L2 plus F2 L1 by L1 plus L2. So that's the conclusion. May be useful to understand some of the problems. Particularly, there are some questions which you will be discussed later in elasticity. In some questions in elasticity, again we may not come back to same calculation here. Should be able to make out then. Suppose if you consider a thin uniform rope or metal wire pulled by forces of same magnitude F applied in opposite directions. That means if F1 equal to F2 equal to F, that means force of same magnitude are applied at each end. In that case, you get T equal to F into L2 plus F into L1 by L1 plus L2, or F into L1 plus L2 by L1 plus L2. So I have discussed this case mainly to tell you this particular conclusion. You get T equal to F. That means if forces of same magnitude equal to F are applied at the two ends of the uniform rope in opposite directions as shown in the figure, which rests on the horizontal plane, smooth horizontal plane, then magnitude of tension will be same at all cross sections of the rope. Will be magnitude of tension at any cross section is same as the magnitude of the pulling force applied at one of the ends of the rope. So when a thin uniform metal rope or wire is suppose pulled by applying force of same magnitude in opposite directions as shown in the figure, then magnitude of tension at any cross section will be the same, equal to the magnitude of the force applied at each end. In some questions, there may be force may be applied only at one end, there may not be any force at the other end. That means if you consider thin uniform roof resting on a smooth horizontal floor, it is pulled by applying force of magnitude F at one end. Let L denote the length of the rope. Then the magnitude of the tension at one end of the rope. The magnitude of tension at the cross section at a distance x from one end of the rope can be found by using the same conclusion. That means F1 is F here, L1 is X, then of course L2 you can take L minus X, and F2 is 0. That means no pulling force applied at the other end. Then magnitude of tension at the cross section at distance x from the end where force applied will be F into L minus X by L1 plus L2 will be L. So those who are interested to copy this working, they can copy it on. Of course, I will be discussing definitely some good number of examples in connecting bodies in the assignment in Newton's laws of motion, which I will be showing in my next class. So in this class, I am next just going to discuss the term impulse and complete this class. In the next class, I will be showing you the assignment in Newton's laws of motion. So next, I am going to discuss the term impulse. So you find some examples where an external force acts on the body for a short time interval, producing considerable change in the linear motion of the body. So in general, if an external force acts on the body for a short time interval, causing considerable change in the linear moment of the body, then the force is called as an impulsive force. That means an external force which acts on the body for a short time interval, producing considerable change in the linear motion of the body, is called impulsive force. So when a large force acts on the body for a short time interval, then the body is said to be given an impulse. For example, if a ball is moving in the horizontal direction, hit by a bat, the ball remains in contact with the bat for a short time interval. But that means the force by the bat on the ball acts for a short time interval, but it produces a considerable change in the linear moment of the ball. We say that impulse is given to the ball by the bat. Similarly, if a ball moving along a floor may sometimes strikes a wall, gets rebounded from the ball. The ball remains in contact with the wall for a short time interval. So the force exerted by the wall on ball can call it an impulsive force which acts for a short time interval. But even the force acts for a short time interval, produces a considerable change in the linear motion of the body. So now coming to speaking in a mathematical way. So let us suppose an impulsive force F bar acts on the body. Let us suppose an impulsive force F bar acts on the body between two instants of time, t equal to t1 and t equal to t2. That means the impulsive force F bar acts for the time interval delta t equal to t2 minus t1. Then impulse of the force for infinitesimally small interval of time is written as F bar dt. So impulse of the force for the infinitesimally small interval of time t is written as F bar dt. That means even the some cases the force may be constant, but in most cases it may not be constant. So even the force is not constant for an infinitesimally small interval of time dt, you may assume the force to be constant. That means the impulse given to the body during the infinitesimally small interval of time dt is written as bar dt. So total impulse given to the body for the time interval delta t, we denote it by j bar, is given by integral f bar dt from t equal to t1 to t equal to t2. Suppose the force F bar is constant. That means some of the problems we deal, the force may be assumed to be constant or may be given to be constant. So in case F bar is constant, I mean the impulsive force is constant for the time interval delta t, then J bar you can write F bar into integral dt t1 to t2. Integral dt between t1 to t2 gives you the time interval delta t. Or we can write, so if F bar is constant, then J bar can be written as F bar into delta t. Need not write the notes now, you can just listen. Later I will be showing you the notes, the type of notes with PowerPoint presentation. Suppose if you find the impulse of the resultant force on the body from Newton's second law, resultant external force acting on the body is given by time rate of change of linear amount of the body. So one more thing you have to remember, that impulse is a vector quantity. So if the force F bar is constant, then the direction of the impulse is the direction of the impulse of the force is the direction of the force here. So in the general case, from Newton's second law, resultant external force of the body can be as time rate of change of linear amount of the body. So impulse given to the body for the short time interval, I mean impulse of the resultant force, resultant external force of the body for the short time interval will be F bar external dt, that will be equal to dp bar. That gives you that dp bar represents the change in the linear moment of the body during the infinitesimally small interval of time dt. So to find the total change in the linear momentum for the finite time interval delta t between the two instants of time t equal t1 and t equal t2, during which the impulsive force acts on the body, we have to integrate this. So if you integrate here both sides, integral f bar dt between t equal to t1 and t equal to t2. So integral dp bar from t equal to t1. So left hand side is denoted by j bar. So impulse of the resultant external force of the body will be equal to final moment of the body at the instant t equal to t2 minus initial moment of the body at the instant t equal to t1. Here pi bar is the initial moment of the body at the instant of time t equal to t1. Pf bar is the final moment of the body at the later instant of time t equal to t2. then the change in the linear momentum of the body, the impulse of the external force, I mean resultant external force. The impulse of the resultant external force acting on the body for the time interval delta t equal t2 minus t1 will be equal to change in the linear momentum of the body. So direction of the impulse same as the direction of the change in linear momentum vector. So I would like to discuss one special case which we sometimes come across in some of the numerical problems in impulse. Of course, in some of the examples, it may be given that the force acting on the body changes linearly with time. Then you can show it by graph. But in general case, if you draw a graph for impulsive force acting on the body along magnitude of impulsive force acting on the body along y-axis and time interval along x-axis. I mean, we consider simpler situation where the body is in one-dimensional motion. Let us consider the graph. Usually we discuss graphs for one-dimensional motion only. The problems we do in mechanics at the 11th class level or for the entrance examinations. So let us consider a body which is in one-dimensional motion, which is under action of the impulsive force for a short time interval. Then if you draw a graph, in most of the cases, the magnitude of the impulsive force first increases from 0 to a maximum value, then decreases from maximum value to 0. For example, you take the example of collision of two balls, or collision of a ball with a fixed surface like a wall, or collision of a ball with a bat. Let us suppose the impulsive force on the ball begins to act from the instant t equal to t1, and the impulsive force ceases to act on the ball at the instant after the instant t equal to t2. So the impulsive force, magnitude of the impulsive force of the ball starts increasing from 0 and finally reduces to 0. So you can roughly show the graph in the manner shown on the diagram. So if you consider an infinitesimally small interval of time dt, that means here I am constructing small elementary rectangle with infinitesimally small breadth equal to dt on time axis. The force may be nearly constant for the time interval. So magnitude of the impulse given to the body for the short time interval is fdt. That fdt gives the area of that small elementary rectangle where length of this rectangle equal to f, breadth equal to dt. That means if we can imagine the total area between the curve and time axis to be divided. So I am not discussing about special case at present. We'll come back to special case again. I am discussing the general discussion about the calculation of the impulse from graph. So for infinitesimally small interval of time dt, the force, impulsive force, magnitude of impulsive force may be assumed to be constant. So magnitude of the impulse given to the body for that infinitesimally small interval of time dt is fdt, which is equal to almost equal to the area of the small rectangle. So to find the total impulse or total change in the linear momentum of the body for the time interval delta t equal to t2 minus t1, we have to add the area of all such elementary rectangles. That means you can imagine that the total area to be divided into very large number of small elementary areas. Each elementary area in the form of rectangle with infinitesimally small breadth dt. So sum of the areas of all the elementary rectangles, this is the total area between the force time curve and time axis. That gives you the total impulse. So the conclusion you have to remember is that, of course later I will show you the conclusion on the screen, the notes which I am going to show you later. In the case of one-dimensional motion, the body is under action of impulsive force which acts along the line of motion. Then the area under the force time graph and time axis gives you the impulse of the force. Now I will come to the special case which I was about to discuss. There are some questions you find in many books and previous exam papers where it may be given that the force may be varying linearly with time. Suppose if it is given that magnitude of the impulsive force, if it is giving increase of linearly with time, then the force time graph will be a straight line passing through origin. That is about the force first increases linearly with time from 0 to some maximum value denoted by F0. Then decreases linearly with time from F0 to 0. That capital T denotes the total time during which the force acts. That means capital T the time interval during which the impulsive force acts on the body. So area of this triangle OAB gives you the impulse given to the body for this time interval capital T. So area of triangle OAB equal to half into base into height. So the area of triangle OAB gives you the impulse. The base gives you the total time capital T for which the force acts, and height gives you the magnitude of the maximum value of the force. So in such examples where the magnitude of the impulsive force first increases linearly with the time from 0 to some maximum value denoted by F0, then decreases linearly from F0 to 0, then the impulse of the force can be written as half T F0. So I am going to show you the summary of the discussion I have done about the term impulse. So those who are students who are interested to write the notes, they can get ready with their paper and pen or notebook and pen. I'm going to show you the notes on the screen. Come on, look at the screen. I'm going to show you the notes for the discussion I have done, the summary of the discussion I have done for impulse. So those who want to write the notes, they can start writing the notes. I will once read out. If a large force acts on a body for a short time interval, causing a considerable change in the linear momentum of the body, then it is called as an impulsive force. Those who want to write the notes, come on, they can start writing. So in case you need more time to copy the notes, you can take a pause and then write. Take your time and write the notes. I'd like to show the next point. If an external force F bar acts on a body for the time interval delta T equal to T2 minus T1, between the instants of time T equal to T1 and T equal to T2, then the impulse of the force is given by J bar equal to integral F bar dt, T1, T2. instance of here, there should be word time here. So if f bar is constant, then j bar can be written as f bar into delta t. Of course, delta t equal T2 minus T1. So those who are writing the notes, please come on, write this point also. Copy down this point. Next, in case you need more time to copy the notes, you can take a pause and copy the notes. Take your time and copy the notes. I'd like to show you the next point on the screen. Impulse of the resultant external force in the body during the time interval delta t will be equal to change in the linear moment of the body during the same time interval. So mathematically you can write j bar equal delta p bar. Delta p bar you can write pf bar minus pi bar. Come on, those who are writing the notes, copy down. Of course, it's understood that pi bar is the initial moment of the body at the instant t equal t1. Pf bar is the final moment of the body at the instant t equal t2. And delta p bar is the change in the time interval, change in the linear momentum. Delta p bar is the change in the linear momentum of the body during the time interval delta t equal to t2 minus t1. Come on, copy down. Those who are writing the notes, come on, copy down. In case you need more time to write the notes, you can take a pause and copy down the notes. Next point I would like to show, in case of one-dimensional motion, if the impulsive force F, I mean magnitude force here, acts along the line of motion, the area under the FT graph and time axis gives the impulse given to the body. Come on, those who are writing the notes, come on, copy down this point also. I'd like to show you the next point. That is a special case. Consider a body moving in a straight line path under the action of force whose magnitude first increases linearly with time from 0 to f0 and then decreases linearly from f0 to 0. If capital T is the time interval during which force acts on the body in the direction of motion, then impulse of the force is given by J equal to half T f0. Come on, copy down. Those who are writing the notes, come on, they can write this point also. Next, I will be showing the graph for the same special case. In case you need more time to copy, you can take a pause and copy this. This is the graph for the same special case. You can copy down the graph. So now I am going to stop this class. So in my next class, I will be showing you the questions in Newton's laws of motion. I call it as assignment in Newton's laws. I will be showing number of questions in Newton's laws of motion, mostly multiple choice type questions, starting with the simpler questions, because the questions I am showing on the screen, keeping in view of your board examinations also, because nowadays the board textbooks also are including some standard questions. So I will be showing the questions starting from the simpler type, one after another, so that first you can start going through those questions. and you can start trying each question. You can take a pause and try the question. At the end of all the questions, I will be showing you the answers on the screen so that you can check up your calculations and answers you got. Then after that, after showing the assignment, there will be separate classes for solutions of all the questions in the assignment. You can see in the index file solutions. So some students may be too weak in physics, very weak in physics. They may not be able to try any questions. There are exceptional students. In such cases, they did not get totally discouraged. They can first try to go through the solutions directly for all questions. Later again, they can come back to the assignment. Again, they can make a fresh start going through all the questions in the assignment, the class intended for assignment. Then they can try the questions themselves. First they can go through the classes meant for solutions of the questions in the assignment. Then later they can take one gap and again come back to the assignment. They can make a fresh start and go through all the questions in the assignment. Then they can try. So finally they should learn to solve. You can learn to solve. Okay.